Hello everyone, my name's Richard Box and I'm a textile artist. Now, I started out actually as a painter when I was at art school, and then after I qualified I decided to become a teacher, and on the teacher training course we were persuaded to try all kinds of other disciplines. And along came a wonderful lady called Constance Howard, and she had malachite green hair, and she gave us a very inspiring talk. She was head of the embroidery department at Goldsmiths College where I was, and very encouraging. My work is mainly naturalistic, so it's animals, flowers, landscapes is what I enjoy most of all. And the method, so you have the fabric, and it could be any fabric at all. It could be clothes from a charity shop, it could be car boot fairs. Anyway, we cut them up, glue them down with PVA glue, which I get from my local handyman store. It's very tacky, and don't water it down, otherwise it will show through, and you need a tiny little blob just to secure it. Then you move on with details. So these little fellows are going to be Blackberries. That's a cocktail frock from a charity shop. That's just a piece of ordinary black cotton, and that's a kind of luster, I guess it's silver paint on some kind of plastic. Anyway, they're going to turn out to be Blackberries. We move on. I secure them now with a zigzag stitch, and so you're matching not necessarily the colours, but you're matching the tonal values, so dark on dark, light on light, and you may pick up that that's actually dark green on there. Then we move on here, and you'll see I've done tiny little zigzag stitches in 3 different tonal values of red. I mean, I know in everyday language we'd call that pink, but in fact pink is pale red, isn't it? And that gives the light shining from above on the Blackberries and makes them twinkle. And then in the very dark shadow I use a glitter thread. A lot of people would think of using glittery threads in the highlights, and if you look at it, only about 25% of it actually catches the light, the rest is in shadow. Whereas it's not a good idea to have that as a highlight because it'll look black. So I like glitter and I use it, but only in the shadows. And for highlights I have to use a matte, not a shiny thread, and then it's constant. Now we move on, and you see that the silver that we had earlier has a straight stitch now going round and round in the mid-tone red there, and then finally for the Blackberries comes a black thread which hides all the trailing threads of the pink or pale red from one to another. At first I used to cut them all off and suddenly realised, wait a minute, you can cover them with black, and then it makes it more secure. So I've got 3 ripenesses of Blackberries. Now we come to this one here, and you will see I've now gone around the edges of the petals in 2 tonal values of pale red, pink, but using now a presser foot, where I start with a straight stitch, move to a zigzag, and go around each one to secure them. After that, back to the darning foot, you just about make out a gold thread, and then it's zigzagged around over here. I try to use the threads that I've used everywhere somewhere else as well. By repetition, it links it together. And then finally comes the spider's web, which I have drawn out beforehand, and it's a very, very unstable thread and needs to be couched down with the colour underneath it. So in my wisdom, after doing it several times, I suddenly realised really and truly the spider's web should be made earlier. So when I'm doing all those different colours, then it should be secure. So that's the method for pictures of this kind. Now this one here, which is cornflowers and marigolds, was once actually a painting underneath, and I didn't like it, so I covered it all up with the method you've just used, and finally use a whole lot of beads. Now of course it takes a long time to sew these on, but who's in a hurry? Now, a commission came in the other day from an American guy who wants a landscape. In fact, it's rather interesting because he said that his wife was, I helped her many years ago, about 20 years ago, when she was doing her A-levels. Anyway, he wanted spring and autumn. So this is the method I've shown before. I've used, if you can get really close, loopy stitches by hand on top there, and on this one there's a foot on the machine called a tailor tacking foot, and what it does, you can just see it here, it loops up the stitch into this marvellous circular fringe, as it were, which gives an added texture to it. And I think that's about it for that one. What you might like to see is how I do this method, which is drawing with the sewing machine needle. And what I do is to have a picture, I trace it, and then mirror version the tracing, and then put it on the back. So I stitch through the tracing paper so it comes facing way round on this side. The colours I use, which might seem rather strange, I've learned from Impressionism. That is, I only use, well, I can use brown and black, but I prefer to start with the primary and the secondary colours, which I've learnt from Impressionist painters. Monet's haystacks, for instance, when you look from a distance, look all brown, but when you get close up, you can see they're made from the primary and secondary colours. So this, for instance, is a hare. When you look really closely, there's no brown there at all. It's blue and orange, and there's some yellow, and there's different yellows and different blues. It's all mixing them together, and here's another one using exactly the same procedure, although this one actually has green added to it and purple as well. But from a distance, your eye turns them into brown. So those are the two main methods I use. What I haven't explained are the paintings. So this is a painting of a hare. And I think if you look closely, I use the same principle. The browns and the greys that you see here are not brown and grey in the paint at all. It's layers, very thinly, of blue, red, yellow, green, purple, and in thin layers, build it up, build it up, build it up. The system in paint is called glazing, and then eventually come the thicker paints, of which become opaque and hide, you add details. And so what I do with paint then informs what I do with the fabric, and the fabric also informs what I do with the paint. And I like it all, so I move from one to another, and each one feeds on the other. So I hope that's been useful for you, and have a good time yourself in your textile creativities.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.